The Olympic Games. They have a lot of sports, and they've included a lot of sports over the years. However, there's a lot of sports that haven't been included at the Olympic Games, and some of them are just kind of a perfect fit for the Olympic spirit and kind of how the Olympic Games are structured. And so I was like, you know what? How many of these potentially perfect fit sports are there? There's been a bunch of sports debuted at the 2020 Summer Olympic Games. Breakdancing is scheduled to debut at the 2024 Olympic Games. And like ice mountaineering is scheduled to debut at the 2026 Olympic Games. So we're living in the age of the Olympic Games expanding its sports. So what could be included? And then also taking in mind, well, there's sports like rugby, where rugby is not at the Olympic Games. Instead, they introduced a truncated or kind of like clipped version of the sport called rugby sevens. So rugby, in some sense, is the part of the Olympic Games, while, however, not the true sport of rugby. So I was like, okay, are there any sports that might fall into that category where a modified version of the sport could be introduced to the Olympic Games? And I came up with a list. And so I'm going to go through that list now. So that was my introduction. Here we go, one by one. Up first is snowshoeing. I don't know if this has been in the Olympic Games or not, but this is like one of those ones that it's speed walking is an Olympic sport. Marathoning is an Olympic sport. How is snowshoeing not an Olympic sport? This is like one of those things where like growing up we would look at the list of sports at the Olympic Games and we were like, what the heck is wrong with them? So this is one of those. Another one for the winter sports would be ice axe throwing. Ice axes do exist. I'm Norwegian. I'm Nordic. Yeah, Nordic skiing is one of the longest. It's like the sport that's been included at every edition of the Winter Olympic Games. And for wrestling, it's been Greco-Roman wrestling. So they take from other cultures. The Olympic Games are Greek, but they kind of steal from other cultures. So ice axe throwing, taking from more from the Arctic cultures, would well be fitting for the Olympic Games. It's kind of about antagonizing and villainizing certain peoples, as long as it's not Greek. All right, up next, another and potentially like groundbreaking in some way as a sport that would transcend just one summer or winter Olympic Games, swimming. Ice swimming. So ice swimming is done in water with ice in it or glaciers in it, like it's very cold. So this could be a winter sport, and then swimming would be in both summer and winter Olympic Games. However, it's a different sport of swimming. Yeah, there's different types of swimming. There's pool swimming, open water swimming, marathon swimming, artistic swimming, ice swimming, and there's another type of swimming I get to later in this. All right, so that's one. Up next, base jumping. Depending on how this is set up, base jumping can be from buildings and stuff. So this might not need to be modified to include. It's like, I think it's perfect for the adrenaline angle and the like must be epic angle that's like all advertising that's in my lifetime ever come out around the Olympic Games is must make it epic. Base jumping is like perfectly designed to have a stadium with, tall structures and people just base jumping as part of a competition. It's like perfect for the stadium format of some of the stuff at the Olympic Games. Similar, and this is like would be really cool, is canyoning, however modified for a stadium. How cool would it be to be in a stadium of like the jumbotrons that the Olympic Games loves? And in the stadium, there are canyoning courses. So like you could be a spectator. You don't got to go off someplace where you got to be concerned about the canyoners destroying nature because they're in some remote, water pathway that's traveled there for thousands of years and they gradually erode the rock and the natural environments. No, just modify it for a stadium and it'd be so cool. Like you get sitting in a stadium and there's like running water and canyons in the stadium. That would be very cool. It would be very cool. Okay. Up next is another modified. It'd be modified for wind tunnel skydiving. So I don't actually know if wind tunnel, it's wind, It's human-generated or machine-generated wind. It's machine-generated wind that like blows up, and then people skydive. So it'd be like skydiving. However, maybe it'd be scored like artistic gymnastics. Do like skydiving acrobatics in a wind tunnel. So modified skydiving, and that would be a really kind of like. It'd be like, what's the movie? Is it Now You See Me, the magician movie? It'd be like a magician, have like a stadium or seating around like a central water, or not water column, but like a wind column, wind tunnel, vertical wind tunnel. That'd be something else. Okay, up next, I was thinking about it, and there are triathlons, and there are road races that are what are called loop course. So this is through hiking, modified for loop course. So what do I mean by that? It'd be like, instead of having it be like the Pacific Crest Trail, because the Olympic Games are rotating, it's not a fixed venue games, at least not the modern games, take and make it like a 5-mile loop, and so that way spectators can watch if they want to, that can accommodate spectators. Or like some marathon swimming are loops, or open water swimming are loops. So just take that structure. So do like through hiking. There are fastest times in through hiking. The sport is already kind of, in that sense, perfectly primed to be an Olympic sport. Just make it like a loop course. That way it can be in different locations. So it'd be like, okay, they're going to through hike 120 miles or 1,000 miles, or maybe not 1,000 miles, but I don't know what the distance would be. Different distances, but a loop course, so they have to complete the course a certain number of times. Up next, this one is one that's currently being pushed for to be a part of the Olympic Games, and a number of these I think are, but this is like one that I've written about and published about, male artistic swimming. So men doing artistic swimming as individuals, like the ladies have been doing for decades, and get gender equality here. All right, up next, fin swimming. So that's swimming with fins on. That would be another type of swimming that could be introduced, another swimming sport. There's a bunch of different sports within swimming. Swimming is technically not a sport, so it's an activity before it was ever a sport kind of thing. All right. Common to all human beings, along with bipedal locomotion, also known as like running and walking. Some people like me run before we walk. All right. And then up last is life-saving. So I was a lifeguard. Lifeguarding is different than life-saving. Life-saving is like the fictional version of lifeguarding, where one's given a course or an obstacle or a task to achieve, and they do it without a person actually drowning, right? So in that sense, it's a good fictional thing, right? People aren't actually getting hurt. So I'm not hating on it, I'm just saying it's different than lifeguarding. There are life-saving athletes who have never worked a day as a lifeguard in their life, but they like the sport of life-saving. So it's like activities that might be used by lifeguards to save lives. I've done that. However, life-saving takes them and turns it into a sport. And as someone who worked as a lifeguard, the lifeguards, there was a big difference between life-saving athletes and lifeguards. And the sport would tend to take some of the things that are actually used in real life a little bit too far. So if the Olympic Games did include something like life-saving, they might need to include a bit of like of a preface of, this is not how lifeguarding actually works. This is a sport, not the actual activity of lifeguarding. So that might need to be added. But those are the ones I came up with, much of which are pushing on some level to be included at the Olympic Games. And that could be, at least per my and the people I know, pushing for these perspectives. Happy day.